Folks, hello, welcome again to the B-side. We're going to be doing some facial rigging today for the most part. Who knows where we'll end up when all's said and done. But the goal here really is to take this little character that I was sculpting the last time we were here and adding parts to it and to give it more expressions and the capacity to emote a little bit more and be more interesting in this, right? So right now, the rig is largely set up for the actual body. I'm going to come here and just bring the joints back in. You can see here, it's not completely done, but the skeleton is largely set up, and the most things have been bound together. I can kind of do most of the basic animations and all that kind of stuff. And again, I'll be happy to kind of go through this kind of stuff if anyone's looking for some ideas here. But the idea today really is to focus on the face and just kind of do some things that might be a little bit more custom than like an auto rigger will do, for example. Right now, right, I have the face already. I already have a few things in there. Oh, what's up, Ram? Good to see you, bud. Oh, and from Jamaica, hello. How are you doing? Hopefully it's nice down there. I'm in New Jersey. It's not quite so pretty, but I'll try to hide my envy for now. Um, uh, I've already done some stuff for the face in terms of like blocking out some basic rigging, right? And again, I'm going to bring back the joints just for a second here. So you can see there are a couple of joints, not a whole lot of joints in the face right now. And I'm going to try and keep this rig light. Even though I want this rig to do a lot of things, my approach typically is to try to keep the actual deformed mesh as light as possible, which means most of the blend shapes coming in are going to kind of go through an intermediary. I don't want to have this face right here have all these joint clusters to it and all these different blend shapes coming in. I just kind of want to keep it as light as possible. So what I tend to do is kind of have a proxy face that is piped into this main face, and all the other stuff is going to be pumped into that proxy. So it's like a gatekeeper basically for all the stuff coming into the face. And you can see right now there are only like three main joints for the head. There's the head joint, which is this main guy right there. You're going to see these other guys light up. This is because they're all parented to it, right? But this is the joint for the head. Hey, you guys, how you doing, man? Ram, am I doing blend shapes for facial animation? Heck yes. That's kind of the goal here. And I kind of, again, I just want to kind of show you some, whether you're using Maya or not, right? It doesn't really matter. The idea really is more about almost the logic behind doing some of these things and how they kind of give you some flexibility. So right now, again, I have a couple of things here blocked in, just a couple of basic things, right? The head joint obviously is connected to the head control, and the head control just rotates the head. Nothing exciting there. I have a jaw control, which you may have guessed will rotate the jaw. So I have the jaw control right here, and that will just kind of, like bring the jaw down. I can also translate it down if I wanted to. But I also have a joint right up top here above the joint, above the jaw for the lower face. And the lower face, basically the jaw joint is parented to it. And what that lower face joint will do is it kind of allows you a little bit more of a cartoony movement with the face. So if I grab this control for the lower face joint, I'm going to just hide it so I can't grab the geometry right now. If I grab this control right here, you can see it's grabbing this bone. And this bone is essentially just there to move the jaw and a little bit of the face. So if I move this, you can see the lower face is going to move with it. And why I would use this is kind of to scrunch the face a little bit. So if I wanted to kind of give her an expression where she's trying, like she's like thinking, or she's kind of like giving it like some, she's kind of having a little scrunched face, I can just kind of like, I'll do it from the front here. I can just kind of like, do a little bit of this, right? So like it kind of allows you a little bit more of a lower jaw movement. Now, if I try and do this, it's going to look stupid, but it's really just about giving her a little bit of a squash and stretchy feel. And that's what this lower face jaw is for. So for the most part, that's all I have set up for the face in terms of actual joints. There are two other joints, though, that are kind of relevant, and these are the joints that control the eyes, right? These little joints right here, the eyes are just bound to them. And one of the things that's important to keep in mind is when the eyes move, the face is not completely static. So these little joints, they're going to rotate whenever the eye control moves the eyes, right? They're going to rotate the eyes left and right. But if I zoom in here, and as I move that left and right, you're going to see there's a little movement in the skin as well, right? And that's because, again, these are spheres below the face. Yo, what's up, B? See, good. Thanks, guys, for coming again. Thank you so much for showing up. Hopefully, this is going to be helpful. I'm going to kind of play around with some ideas behind what I want to do to make these facial rigs kind of fun to use. And so this, again, this joint here that moves the eyes, these two different joints, I should say, they also move the skin because there's a very tiny bit of influence of these joints on the face. Okay. And you're going to see that there's also some other movement going on. So I want to talk really quickly about the three different types of blend shapes that I tend to kind of have. 3D Matic, what's up, man? I'm so glad you guys showed up. Thank you so much for coming back in here. Again, like I said, I hope this is going to be helpful. There are like three different types of blend shapes that I'm going to be using typically when it comes to a face, right? One, the main blend shapes typically are ones that are just essentially alternate poses that you can kind of switch between, right? It's not an on and off so much as it kind of is a gradation from off to on. And I'll show you an example, right? So for example, I'm going to do a lip sync rig for her. I'm going to make it so she could talk if we wanted to put dialogue in there. And I've set up the basic controls for that because lip sync rigs are actually pretty straightforward. They pretty much have three main controls. The main control here is the sync control, which doesn't really do much. It sounds like it does a lot, but it doesn't. It has the mouth open and closed, and it has the lips pucker or not. And that'll give you a kind of the ah ooh movement of the mouth. And I've already set it up so that if I move this down, the jaw opens up. Right? That's all. It's simply a simple switch that kind of essentially just switches between two shapes. It's not really a shape in this case. It's actually kind of like plugged into the jaw control. But a blend shape, some blend shapes are just kind of like static poses that you can switch between, right? So a smile or whatever. There are other blend shapes that are essentially live at all times, right? They're essentially, for example, here, if I go here to my head control, I have some other controls I have turned off right now, so they're not cluttered. If I bring back, for example, some hood controls here, these little controls here are connected to a secondary blend shape of this hood that has basically clusters that can kind of pull it, right? So if I move this, it's actually linking to a live blend shape. So I can kind of like adjust this positioning by essentially just linking it to a blend shape that's live right now. So that's the second type of blend shape, one that is live, but kind of like movable, as you go. And the other type of blend shape really is one that you kind of keep to be automatic. And by automatic, I mean, you don't really adjust it at all. You set it up and then you kind of let it do its own thing. And that's what this last one is. This last one is, and these are the most useful for me. So when I got this eye control here and move it, you can see here the eyes move because they're connected to the eye control, but the brow also is going to move up and down, and the eyebrows are going to move up and down. And those are blend shapes that are kind of connected to the movement of this eye control with a set driven key that basically says when this eye control moves up, launch it, open up, like turn on this blend shape where the brows go up. So basically, instead of having to manually do that all the time, it's just going to do it automatically because it's plugged into the value of these eye controls, right? So those are the three different types. Static blend shapes you turn off and on, ones that are always live but you can kind of like access whenever you want, and ones that are automatic, right? Okay, B, what you got? I got your tutorial on rigging, but I haven't time to go through it. So those videos teach all this you'll be going through. Syncing, yeah, there is a lip sync control video in that video. Absolutely, yes. Like I said, because it's really not nearly as confusing or complex as you might think. It's really essentially two main shapes, and then maybe three shapes basically. But that's really it. And then you can kind of play around with all the movement in between. And that's kind of where I want to start today. Honestly, is the lip sync control, just because. It's a good way to kind of get used to some of the different things we gotta get working here. So I want to kind of talk about lip sync controls. I want to talk about how we can kind of give her a blink, and a blink is going to be very similar to this kind of control here, where it's basically moving a bunch of different things. Because you look at the face has the actual mesh, but it's got the eyebrows and upper and lower lashes as well. And anything that's going to move the eyes and the brows is going to probably kind of affect all of those a little bit. So we have to kind of like keep all those things in mind, right? So lip sync, when you get right down to it, the lip sync controls, they have the jaw moving up and down, right, which I've already set up. And I'll go over that really fast. And then the lip sync control going left and right is going to pucker the lips or not pucker the lips. So it's got the ooh or the or that kind of a thing, ooh and o. And the other two main face shapes are the F/V when you bring your lower lip below your teeth, behind your teeth, and the other main one is the BMP, when you kind of like bring your lips close, kind of like tight together, right? So you have to kind of like set up controls to make it easy to do those things. Now for the sync control, again, like I said, it's just basically a square. And what I did for this, basically, I simply made this control and I put it on this grid. So I go to my front view here. It's since been slid over, but it was essentially on this little square of a grid right here. And I basically set the limits on this control so it can only move one unit up or down and one unit left and right. You can see here the translate X and Y are the only options available to me. I've hidden all the rest of those because I don't want to use them. And in Maya, at least, I can go to the attribute editor and go to the limit information under translate. I can just tell it, don't go any further negative than -1. Don't go any further positive than 0. Do the same thing for the Y. So I cannot go any more than these little areas here, up and down and left and right. So it kind of like helps constrain the movement of the control. So what I want to do here, like I said, I want to have the up and down movement control the jaw. And what I've done here, basically, I have a control for the jaw, right? As you've seen. I'm going to bring my joints back for now. And this control for the jaw is, if I go to my jaw here, you're going to see in the channel box these little blue lines here. These blue lines mean they are being constrained. This bone is being constrained by a point constraint, which means it's constraining it in the translation. It's also constraining it with the orientation. So if I were to move or rotate this jaw control, it will also move or rotate the jaw. But what I want to do is I want to hook up. I wanted to hook up the up and down or rotation of this jaw to here. But if I did that, then this jaw control would have an input all the time, and I wouldn't be able to use it for anything else. It would be kind of like co-opted by this control. So what I simply did is kind of a big straightforward thing in rigging is I put this into a group. So you can see here in my little outliner, here's my control, and I put this into a little group, like its own little, I grouped it to itself basically, which is just a layer of hierarchy above the actual control. And that group will of course also move the control. And that group is the one that I have hooked up to that sync. So you can see here when I grab the jaw control, there's no blue or any kind of like colors in here to say that there are any inputs. But if I grab the group above that, you see there are some blue boxes here, which means this one is being affected by the sync control. So basically, when you want to be able to kind of have some automation on your control curves, but you still want to be able to use the control curves, you need to kind of create a hierarchical system where you can kind of have something working on the level above that while the actual curve itself is still available to you. So now what I want to do is do the next part of this little sync control, which is the pucker. This is going to be the main one. And it doesn't need to be anything beautiful. It just needs to kind of work. And we can always adjust it after the fact. So I could bring this into ZBrush. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab this face here. I'm just going to, now before I export this out as an object to be worked on in ZBrush, you just want to make sure if you have a skin cluster attached or a blend shape node attached, you want to set the envelope or the influence of those things to 0 so that when you export them out as an OBJ, you're not exporting out a face which already has stuff affecting it, because then it'll kind of like double the effect when you bring it back into Maya. So here is just a version of this face. It's the exact same face that I exported out. And all I want to do is do a very quick little pucker. Like I said, it doesn't need to be anything amazing because it's not something we use a lot. It's just something that's going to be there for that one sync control. So I'll just get my move brush here. I'm just going to go to I'm going to mask out the nose for now. I'm just going to kind of like, I'm just going to bring up the lip here. Just a little bit of a pucker. All right, so I'm just going to kind of bring these lips. I might turn them out a little bit. Like I said, I'm not going to get overly cute about this, but I just want to have a little bit of a pucker. Let's just bring this forward a little bit, and I'm going to kind of push sides of the face in a little bit here. Lightly smooth. Okay. And again, this is probably going to be a little rough, but that's okay. We can always tweak it. Because once I bring this in and plug it in as a blend shape, it's there and it's live. It can be adjusted at any time, right? But this is just going to be a rough approximation of a pucker. Hey, Ben. How you doing, man? All right. So this is my little pucker lip here. I'm going to bring it forward a little bit. She's very low res, so it's not like I can do a whole lot of, cute shaping to this. I just need to kind of, like I said, get it started, and then we'll go from there. Yeah, in fact, again, like most of the stuff I'm actually going to end up doing probably in Maya B when it comes to like doing these different expressions. Some expressions, but the expressions where it's just quicker to grab stuff with ZBrush's sculpting tools, I'll just do it in here. And what I'll end up doing is I'll just export this right back out, right? And then I'm just going to, so I'm going to call this pucker. And then I'll just go up here and just slide my history back to before I did anything. If I need to do another blend shape, I'll just, just work on that again. So I exported that out. So I'm going to show you, again, I already have a blend shape node plugged into here. So I'm going to just kind of show you what's going on here. So I'm going to import my blend shape here. So let's get this guy. Let me just go through all my stinking folders to find this guy. OBJ, blend shape, pucker. All right. So you can see it comes in right in the exact same spot. I'm just going to grab it and I'm going to slide it over. I'm going to center its pivot really fast and just slide this to the side so it's not right in the way. It doesn't really matter where it is. So long as you don't reuse the transformations and kind of like make this its default position, you can move it wherever you want before you plug it in. All right. Yo, Ian, how you doing, man? I didn't see you down there. I didn't see you down in the chat. You snuck right in there. You were lurking. You're not lying. So I have now. If I grab my face, you're going to see I do have an input here for face blend shapes already, and it's called the head blend shape gateway. Again, like I said, I don't like to have, like if I'm going to have a lot of blend shapes like smile, frown, sneer, right brow, left brow, I don't want to have the main face, the one with the actual skin clusters, having all those inputs. For some reason, it just bothers me to think that all that stuff is dependent on that one mesh. So I have this kind of, again, I call it a gateway. This is basically just a head whose only purpose is to be the recipient of all the blend shapes. You can see here I have this guy here. This is my blink that we're going to be doing today. I haven't done that one yet. But here is my gateway group. So you can see here, if I solo this, this is just a bunch of copies that have all the other blend shapes plugged in. So if I come here and go to my inputs here, you're going to see it's got a couple of different blend shapes already plugged into it. This is the one that's kind of a live conduit to the main face. So all the blend shapes I do, I'm going to plug into this one. Again, like I said, I just like having the main face that's got the skin joints on it not be bogged down by all these blend shapes. It's just going to have one plugged in, right? So my pucker here, I brought it in, right, from, let me load this here. I brought this in from ZBrush. You can see it's got this weird prefix. It's like this little pucker colon. I don't want that. I want, because again, these are all be plugged in as blend shapes. I want the name to actually be what it is. So I'm just going to go up here really quickly to Windows, General Editors, Namespace Editor, and just get rid of that prefix. And now I can just name it Pucker, and it won't give me any trouble. Here's Pucker. So again, I'm just going to grab this now, and I'm going to basically plug this into my gateway face, the face that is the recipient of all the facial blend shapes. So where is it? It's right in the exact same spot as the head. It's kind of hard to see. So I'm just going to do it in my outliner here. In my gateway group, you can see here is my head blend shape gateway. So I'm going to select my little pucker. I'm going to Control Shift the head blend shape gateway, and I want to add this to the list of existing blend shapes. What's up, Tony? Ivan, how you doing, man? I'm so glad you can catch this stream. I hope it helps. So I'm going to grab the blend shape first. I'm going to Control Select or Shift Select, whatever works best. But in the outliner, Control Select is better because you don't grab everything in between. And I want to go up here to my deform menu. I'm not going to create a blend shape because I already have a blend shape node attached to it. I'm going to come down here to Edit Blend Shapes. I'm going to go to Add. I'm going to go to the option box so I can pick which blend shape node I want to choose. I have blend shape nodes for lots of different things, for head, hood blend shape, all that kind of stuff, right? So this is the head intermediary. This is the one that this is what I named it. Don't worry about this, but I'm going to plug it into that and apply and close. So now if I grab my head blend shape gateway and open up my little inputs here, you're going to see pucker now exists, right? There it is. It's set to 0, so nothing's going to happen. But if I were to kind of like turn this on from 0 to 1, right? Now those lips have puckered, right? So that's what this does. It just goes between 0 and 1. It just turns it off and on, okay? So I'm going to leave it at 0, but I need to have this node, this head blend shape node active, because what I'm going to end up doing now is plugging that pucker control off and on to that lip sync control, right? We're going to do that using what's called a set driven key. Now I'm just going to hide my gateway group really fast. I can still access it, so I can get to that node, but I just don't want it to be in the way, right? This pucker guy here, I don't really need it right now, but I'm going to keep it there in case I need to make some adjustments. I can just go back and tweak the points, right? So what I want to do now is I want that pucker blend shape, which I just plugged into my gateway. I want to have that turn off and on in conjunction with this lip sync control. Okay, let me just turn off this. There's one, who was this guy? This is the head mouth fix. I'm going to hide that. Okay. There are too many heads in the way. So I have this set up to open and close the jaw when it goes up and down. What I want this to also do is pucker or unpucker when I go left and right. Okay. So right now, what I have to do is create a switch that tells Maya that when this is all the way to my right, have that pucker turned off. But when it goes to my left, it should slowly turn it on. Okay. So it's called we're going to create what's called a set-driven key, which, like I said, it's like a switch, right? It says when this is here, make this value 0. When this is somewhere else, make this value whatever. So I'll go up here to my rigging menu. Actually, it's probably going to be an animation. An animation here. I have it on my shelf, but in case you're not using this, I'll go up here to animation. So I have my animation-related menus here. I'll go to key and go to set-driven key and choose set. So now it's going to bring up this little window of a driver and the thing that is driving, right? The switch and the thing is switching on and off, basically. So the driver is going to be this little control here. So I'm going to grab that control and hit load driver. You're going to see there it is. And what I want this to drive or control is that blend shape, that pucker blend shape. So how do I get to that? Well, let's go back to my little head gateway, the one with the inputs that I just put that pucker in. Now, if I select this little input here, the head intermediary, I hit load driven, you're going to see there it is, right? So if I select that head intermitting thing, I have pucker right here. So I want to connect the movement of this from left to right with the turning on and off of this pucker blend shape. So the things I want to connect are the translate X of the control. That's going to be my switch value that's going to turn it off and on, and the pucker control. So right now, translate X is at 0, and right now pucker is at, if I select this, right now pucker is at 0. That connection I want to solidify. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to grab translate X and pucker and hit key. Basically, I'm telling Maya, when that translate X is set to 0, that pucker blend shape should also be set to 0. Now what I'm going to do is grab this control and slide this all the way to the left. So now it's at -1. And when this is at -1, I want this pucker blend shape to be turned on. So I'm going to type in 1. Okay, so now I have these two at -1 and 1 respectively. I'll hit key. So now it knows that those are the two ends of the spectrum, right? When I grab this now and move this back, you're going to see, right? I get back and forth. I get off and on, off and on. Okay. Now, there's one more thing I want to do. This is essentially kind of an animation in a sense, right? It's not happening over time, but it is happening in conjunction with an input, a keyframe. And by default in Maya, the keyframes start slow and they kind of ease in, right? To kind of make the motion feel more natural. But in this case, I don't want that. I want this to be a switch. I don't want there to be any pause. So if I go up here to my window drop down and go to my animation editors and go to my graph editor, if I come over here and grab that, that head intermediary node, you're going to see my little pucker. This is the graph curve. See how it kind of flattens at first and then it speeds up and then it slows down. What it's basically saying is that control isn't going to start right off the bat. It's going to slow in. I don't want that. I want this control to be immediate 1-to-1. So I'm just going to grab these here and just make them linear. So basically I'm saying don't smooth it out, don't make it clean, make it, and don't make it smooth, easing out, just make it immediate. So now this is going to be immediate control here. If I grab this and go boom, boom, boom. So what you get now is you get this big range of motion. You get all this, right? And you can do a whole lot of really, you can do most of the talking with just this, right? And again, you can go, you can adjust this as much as you want and so forth, but this is kind of the idea here, is that we're going to kind of plug in these controls. And we're going to do the same thing with these other two, which is the F/V control and the M/B, right? I'm going to kind of like plug in those two. And again, you can do these in Maya, you can do these in ZBrush, you can do this anywhere you want, really. I just want there to be kind of an easy, a nice quick way to do it. So I'm gonna probably do this in ZBrush here. I'm just gonna kind of like get that lower lip. Now, what I want to do before I do that, I need to make sure that for the FV, that I want the lower lip to kind of go behind the upper teeth. That might be kind of tricky to do, depending on where the upper teeth are. So I might need to actually at some point also animate the upper teeth to kind of like cheat them into motion, into position. But for now, let's just give ourselves something here. So I'm going to grab the upper teeth here. I'm going to grab this whole group of upper teeth. And for some reason, I think I named them wrong. Yeah, I named them both bottom teeth. That's great. I'm going to call these top teeth because that's kind of what they are. I'm going to export these out. And I'm going to use these basically as a reference in ZBrush so that I kind of know when I'm pushing the lip around where I want it to go, right? So I'm going to go back into ZBrush here. Just going to insert some place saver and then import the top teeth so that where they gotta be. There you go. So now again, I want to make what amounts to a a V/F expression on the face. Not much happens when you do that. When you go V, you just kind of bring your upper lip up a little bit, and then you tuck your lower lip behind your top teeth, right? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to my Move Topological brush so that I can more easily bring the upper lip up without having to worry about the lower lip getting affected, just like that. Now I'm going to use my little mask here. And from the side, maybe I'll use Move Infinite Depth and just kind of, oh, I have a mask going on here. Of course. Let me just do a little bit of this. Move just to kind of I'll bring up the side of the nose just a little bit, right? So again, nothing overly fancy. I don't have any plans really to make her talk in my most shorts. You don't really have a lot of talking. It's more physical. But sometimes but I do want to have her kind of like thinking about certain things she's doing. A lot of times when you think, you kind of almost mouth certain kind of like words or something like that. So, oops, this, okay. That's pretty good. So now I'm going to grab this again. I'm going to export this out. And I'm just going to go into my little blend shape folder. And I'm just going to call this FV. And again, I'll leave that for now, but I'll probably end up just undoing the history and just doing the other one as well. So what I want to do now is let's get this face back to normal. And let's import. Now this guy, again, pucker looks okay right now. So I'm just going to put pucker into my blend shape folder. And I'm just going to hide it. So don't worry about it. Let's bring in our F/V guy. And once again, we're just going to grab this and center its pivot, slide it over. And I'm once again going to go to my namespace editor, get rid of that little prefix that kind of like makes this weird name. I'm just going to call this FV. I'm going to plug this into that same intermediate, that same kind of like bridge, that gateway. So I'm going to grab my little FV guy here, come here and find my head gateway in the outliner. And once again, deform, edit, blend shape, add. I'm going to go specify node, right? I want to go to my head intermediary, line close. So now I'm going to go to my head blend shape. I'm going to turn this on so I can see how it looks. There you go. So you can see again, and I will need to adjust the position of the teeth when the time comes. I believe these are the bottom teeth. Yeah. So again, plenty. I'm going to need part of this blend shape being turned on is going to require the teeth to be moved, which is fine. We'll come back to that. But at least now you can see how this works. So I'm going to go now to my little FV control. And once again, I'm going to set up a set-driven key to connect this F/V blend shape to it. So I'm going to turn it back to 0 really fast. And that's, once again, key, set-driven key, set. I'm going to grab this time my FV control, put that in the driver. Right? You can see here, this only does one thing. It goes up and down. Let's go back to my head blend shape gateway and grab my little blend shape node, pop this into the driven, and now I want translate Y, which is currently at the very top here, to be connected to the FV blend shape. Hit key to save that connection of that being up and FV being turned off. I'm going to grab this and now pull this all the way down, and then turn that FV blend shape on, right? And then hit key. So once again, all I've done is I've made it so that when this is down, that blend shape's turned on. When it's up, it's off, right? Pretty straightforward. You can see here, that's what's happening, right? Nothing big. And again, the teeth are in the way right now. It's not a big deal. Part of the blend shape sometimes requires you to move other things. Just like if I were to make the character blink, I would need to move not just the face, but the eyelashes and the eyebrows as well. Same idea here. We're just going to cheat when that time comes. But while we're here, we might as well do the M/B blend shape, because that's the last one we have to do before we're done with the blend, with the actual sculpting part. So let's go back over here to ZBrush. And again, I'm just going to kind of undo back to before. There you go. And the M and B, two things that are happening. One, both your lips are kind of like curling in, which is a little bit tricky sometimes. And also, there's going to be a little bit of a scrunching up of the face. And we'll come back to that scrunching up of the face in a little bit as well. Let's go ahead and do that first. Let's go to my Move Topological brush. And I'm just going to, actually, yeah, and this is kind of, just to be on the safe side here, we'll just mask out the bottom part here. I'm going to mask out most of the nose just so I don't have to worry about that being a problem. And we'll just kind of bring this in and bring the upper lip out a little bit. Invert this mask and do kind of the same kind of thing here to the lower lip. We're going to bring this up. I'll pull this part out a little bit, like that. Bring this up a little bit. I'll make it kind of like a B says, so for games and stuff, you would have, let's say, a bunch of these faces at extremes and then really back inside my. It's possible. See, when it comes to games, I know that things have changed, but for a while there, I don't think that they even recognize blend shapes. I think they do now. But I think for a good part of games, a lot of the expressions and stuff, I think they were actually joints that were kind of bound at different parts of the face that would just move them. I think blend shapes are now usable, so I could be wrong with that now. But I imagine too that maybe a lot of different blend shapes might not be. I don't know if it's like too resource intensive to have all those, because essentially they're just separate objects that you're going to be swapping between. So I think that they used to just use joints and kind of move them around, which is one of the reasons why a lot of expressions in rooms weren't necessarily the most motive. But nowadays, I think that blend shapes are probably used a little bit more. But I think I'm guessing it's probably a mixture. Again, you know, if you can find a way to use joints and just have it be actually part of the mesh, that might work too. But again, that would also then depend on whether or not I would think that would probably be reusable for different people, because smile is pretty much the same for everyone else. But I believe that is the case now. Again, I could be wrong. One of my big things this summer is to try and learn more about Unreal, and that's one of the big reasons why, is because I want to know about whether or not that's a plausible thing to do now. I got a little bit carried away here, but yeah, I think that for a long time it was just joints, but there's been so much now where Unreal, I think, can take blend shapes. I don't know about Unity. I'm not really sure, to be honest. Like I said, I've never had to worry about it, and this is why it's kind of exciting to learn about how this works now, because I do need to find out. But I believe that they were mostly facial joints in games for a while, but now someone if there's someone who has more knowledge than I do about the way games are currently used, make sure you pipe up, because I don't pretend to have a current knowledge of how that's set up. I would imagine they would go with blend shapes, but again, I just don't know how. I just don't know how that works in Unreal, like whether or not it's more resource intensive to have them be like separate objects, just kind of like sitting in the wings as backups. I don't know. These are lots of things that I really should know. I just don't. So here is my MB guy. Let's just really quickly get rid of. Um, but you're gonna see, like, this is none of this stuff is overly complicated. It's just it can be a little repetitive, and it can be just it's just a lot of it's a lot of back and forth of with these switches. So I'm going to grab this guy. I'm going to be a little bit faster. I'm going to grab this, grab my head shape gateway. I'm going to edit this, add this to my current. I missed. Let's try that again. Blend shape. And so again, if I were to go to that head intermittent thing here, let's just see. I'm sure I'll need to adjust the teeth again, but we'll see here. No, not so bad. Okay. So on LinkedIn, Unreal might have rigging in it. That would be interesting. I mean, like they do modeling in there now, right? So it's one of those things where I just wonder if it's going to be just a one-stop shop for everything. Probably. Let's do another set-driven key. Now I'm going to get my MB guy, and I'll load this into the driver. I'm going to add my little thing here into the driven. Translate Y is going to be attached to the MB blend shape. I'm going to key that, bring this down to the bottom, and then turn that on. And then key that. Make sure it's selected. If it's not selected, it won't key anything. It's kind of an important thing. Sometimes it just doesn't select it. So you have to kind of be on ball about that. I want to make sure I go to my graph editor and set this up to be linear, so it's an immediate thing. Okay, there you go. Now, one of the things that I might want to do for the M and B, she's bringing her lip up like this. But what I kind of want to do also is use a little bit of this lower face control. So like I said, just like I said with the jaw before, I'm not going to attach this set-driven key to the lower face control directly, because that would mean there'd be an incoming input on this control, which would mean that I would be able to use it in a regular animated thing. But if I were to then put a group above that, and you can see here, I do have one. Here's my control curve for the lower face, right? And then right above that, there's this control curve group underscore SDK, which means set-driven key. In other words, I have that group there because I know I want to have this affect that. So I'm going to use my set-driven key, but I'm going to have it operate on the group instead. So I still have independent control afterward. All right, B. So yeah, it's a good question. You asked me, have I decided what kind of style I'm going to animate my short in? I definitely want to. Well, yes, I'm not going to overtly steal from Spider-Verse. I'm going to covertly steal from Spider-Verse, not directly in that way, probably, but I want there to be. I'm not going to do it on twos, because doing it on twos is actually hard to do in Maya. You can actually do it regular in Maya, and then in like After Effects, there's a really cool effect called posterized time, which essentially gives it like the more stop motion-y feel, which is really cool. If I were to do it, I would do it that way. But I do want to really play with timing, kind of like stylizing the timing. In other words, trying to not. I want this to be fun more than anything else. I don't want to get bogged down with as an animator. What's really easy to get bogged down in is timing, and if you're trying to get it realistic, you're going to be like, it's going to be really time consuming, and it's not going to be as enjoyable. So I'm going to try to find ways to kind of like play with timing, play with like smear frames where you have like when things are moving, you kind of, instead of having to worry about motion blur, you can have like just like duplicates of the hand, that kind of a thing. That kind of stuff I want to kind of play with. I want to use this as kind of an excuse to play around with those kinds of things. Some things will probably end up being disastrous, and some things might be kind of cool. But yeah, that's definitely part of the thing that's kind of gotten me excited about doing this again, is the idea that I don't need to kind of automatically just revert to, okay, well, it needs to look real. It could also look stylized, and because I'm kind of going with something that's kind of fantastical, it might kind of fit pretty well with that too. So that's kind of that's the goal. That's the thinking. Again, it's fun. It's weird though, because it's a very fine line between stylized and bad. I want to make sure that I don't say, oh, sure, the timing's terrible, but it's because it's stylized. I want to make sure that it actually looks good too. So I'm going to need to try and keep myself honest on that. So animation normally in the posterized, yeah, it does. Posterized time, essentially, I think it kind of just goes and like stutters it. I was playing around with that in After Effects. I was playing around with that for a short that I was working on before. I just wanted to kind of see how it looked, and it really is cool. Like I said, it's just one of those things where you have to kind of make sure that it doesn't look just bad. But yeah, I think that's something I want to kind of play around with, because it's a really cool way to make things have, kind of just kind of play around with timing. Maybe not everything's gonna be that way, but maybe some things make more sense. Like in Spider-Verse, they had Miles animate on 2s and Peter B. Parker animate on 1s because one was more confident than the other, that kind of a thing. So I think but again, that's one of those things where it kind of makes you realize you can actually kind of second guess or kind of like try new things more often. You don't kind of like automatically need to revert to the norm, right? So that's the plan, hopefully. But again, animation for this is going to be it's way in the future, because I'm nowhere near even done anything. But yeah, that's why. But I am making her face, I think, a little bit more rubbery, because I want to have that be a little bit more stylized. And you can see, and the way I painted like things like the eyes and stuff like that, like they're kind of designed to feel a little bit less clean, just because I kind of like the idea, especially because this is kind of like D&D, Dungeons and Dragons-y stuff. It's old stuff. I kind of like the idea of it being kind of like old and like painted, as opposed to, so that's kind of the idea here. So I'm doing my little MB thing. And what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to have, instead of making this MB Visine, this little blend shape, go to 1 at the very bottom, I'm actually going to make it go to 1 a little bit shy of the bottom. So instead of going from 0 to -1, I'm going to go from 0 to -0.85. And at that point, I'm going to want to have this already be there. Actually, you know what? Let's make it even less. -0.7. So what am I talking about? What I mean by this is I want the full blend shape of the M/B to actually be turned on before it gets to that 1. Okay, I want it to actually get to a little bit sooner. So basically, I'm just going in the graph editor and I'm saying, okay, get there a little sooner. So at 0.7, and why am I doing that? -0.7, right? So in other words, I'm like 70% of the way down, and I have that blend shape already turned on 100%. They can asset list for this quarter. Dude, Ben, you might be onto something, because I'm not a modeler by any stretch of the imagination. Don't tempt me. All right. A barrel mimic, dude. I was going through the monster manual looking for different characters to have in the short that I might want to put in there, and there are some messed up things in there, man. So anyway, yeah, I have the blend shape at 100%, basically at 70% of the way down. Why? Because from this point on, I don't want the BM lips to be doing anything. I want the jaw to be doing stuff. So what I'm going to do now is go back to my set-driven key. I'm going to add this back into my driver, my little MB thing here, and it's currently at -0.7. This is my starting point, essentially, for this next phase of the BM blend shapes. So now I'm going to go here to my lower face control, not the face control itself, because I want to keep that independent. I'm going to go to that group above that and put that in the driven. Okay, so when my control curve for the MB is at -0.7, this is going to be at its current state of nothing. It's going to be at 0. It's not going to be doing anything. I'm just going to kind of like rotate. I'm going to kind of keyframe the translations and that kind of stuff. I don't know what's what. So I'm just going to keyframe all of them for this lower face control at 0 at this point. Okay, so I'm going to keyframe that. Boom. And now when this MB control goes all the way down, now I want to have this set-driven key come up a little bit, like this, just a little bit, nothing crazy, but just a little bit more. So now I'm going to keyframe that. So what the heck is happening here, right? What I've done is I've made it so that this control here, when this control, my B/M control, when this comes down from 0 to -0.7, it's slowly turning on that MB blend shape. But once it hits that, then from -0.7 on, that's when the lower face control is going to kind of take over and bring the face up, right? So now it's kind of like, boom, right? So it doesn't just close the mouth together. It also pushes that jaw up, right? Right. So basically, it kind of, that's one of the things I try to do as much as I can, is to kind of make it so that a blend shape being turned on doesn't just feel like a blend shape being turned on. I want it to kind of like feel like there's more happening, like an almost like a overflow after that, like an overlapping motion. So the B and M lips come together, and then the lower face control takes over and kind of pushes it up a little bit. So you kind of get that feeling of the face scrunching up, right? So again, it's a little thing, but it really does, I think, help. It makes the face feel a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more alive when you're doing that. Okay, so I'm gonna grab this. This is my MB blend shape. I'm just going to bring this into my blend shape folder, and I'm going to grab all three of the ones I just did: pucker, FB, MB, put them in a group, and just call this sync group. So I can just hide that whole group, and if I need to get them, I know where to go. Incidentally, this is going to be kind of an ongoing thing I'm going to ask, because the thing that I know that, you know, Blender has gotten a lot better with rigging, but there's a lot of things about Blender which I don't quite know how to do yet, and it's stopping me from learning it. So one of the things that when I first started learning Blender, one of the first things I was trying to do is, okay, let's just make sure the basics that I know how to do, I can find Blender's equivalent. And one of the things that I couldn't find in Blender was making groups, simply grouping something to itself, so you can kind of have a hierarchical structure. You can move one thing around. I don't know that Blender has that, and if they do, I need to know, because I could not figure that out. So I'm going to need to have some sort of, like, you know, group help here explain to me how that works in Blender, because I could not figure that out, and it's got to be there. You don't have hierarchies in you know, for this kind of thing. Rigging is really, really tough. So that's something we need to figure out. So anyway, let's take a look here. So our sync controls now are pretty much set, right? We have the pucker and the jaw moving. This is going to do most of the work, right? We have the B/M or P, and then we have the V and F on there. No, parenting is different, right? Parenting is making one object essentially control another, but grouping is, you know, you're basically making this null, empty object, it's empty box. It's not actually an object. It's, you know, you can actually group, you know, something to itself, right? I can come in here in Maya, for example. I can make this sphere. Here's a sphere, right? Where'd it go? There it is. And I can just hit Control G, and now in my outline I have a group, and in that group is my sphere, right? So basically, I can grab the sphere, I can clean it up, I can make it so that its you know, its translations are zeroed out. But if I grab the group that it's in, I can move the group around, right? And the group is inheriting all this translation value, but the actual object itself, because it's in the group, is still set to 0. So it gives you kind of a layer of insulation in terms of moving or scaling or rotating an object, and whether those values are actually appearing in its attributes, right? I can use the group. It's just an empty theoretical construct that this sphere exists in. I can move that group, I can scale that group, right? But the actual sphere is still 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1. And that is, you know, it's a major deal, especially, like I said, for rigging, especially because you live and die by hierarchies. So I just, you know, I'm sure there's a way to do it, but I couldn't figure that out. And that was one of the things that stopped me right off the bat. It's like, okay, if I can't group, then forget it. I'm not even going to try. So yeah, that's something I need to kind of like learn a little more about. Okay, so that's what I'm going to count on some folks to help me with, because I don't know how that's going to work. What I need to do now is, this is a little thing, but I want to make controls for the teeth, because as you can see from the F and V, depending on what we're doing with the teeth, with the lips, the teeth might be in the way. So I need to kind of find a way to essentially, you know, use that as make some controls so I can get this out of the way. So I need to do that. I also need to do something like some basic stuff. I want to do a blink. And I'm going to do the blink first, because that's a little bit more in keeping with what we were just doing here. So I have a group I already made, the blink blend shape group. So again, this is just a copy of the face, And it's a copy of all the things that are going to be affected by the blink, right? The motion of the eyelids closing. Eyebrows are going to be affected a little bit by that, just because when you bring your eyelids down, you can't help but do a little bit of movement in your brows, and eyelashes obviously as well. So blinking is a little bit of a weird thing in the sense that it probably would make sense just to kind of like do a blend shape by sculpting it in ZBrush. But I'm going to try and do it here because what I don't feel like doing in ZBrush is moving the eyelashes, moving the face, and then bringing them all back in at the same time. What I want to do is see if I can use what's called a wire deformer in Maya to essentially deform most parts at the same time. So wire deformers are basically just edges that you kind of like remove or duplicate from the surface of a mesh and then tell Maya to turn it into a deformer. It's like the bend curve deformer essentially in ZBrush in a way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this blink. I already named it blend shape. I'm going to isolate it so that the other stuff isn't in the way. And what I want to do is come here and grab the edges, a string of edges, which I'm going to use essentially as my deformer. So it has to be near the eyelid, obviously, right? So I'm going to go here to my edge mode. I'm going to grab the edges of, oops, not that one. The edges of this guy right about here. So I'm going to stay a little shy of that corner. So I have basically at the corners of the eye, right? That little curve. I'm going to go up here to modify. I'm going to choose convert polygon edges to curve. So you can see how I have now a curve that exists right here. I'm just going to call this blink wire left. So this is going to be my, I don't know why there's an E in there. Heck, I'm real with that. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing here on this side. I'm going to grab this edge right here and then grab these, right, grab those edges. This is the same one. And once again, modify, convert polygon edges to curve. So again, blink wire underscore right. So now I have these two curves. I'm not really doing anything right now. They're just kind of hanging out. So now I'm going to unselect, I'm going to deselect everything. I'm going to create what's called a wire deformer. And I have to do it twice, obviously. I'm going to go here to my deform. And I'm going to go here to wire. I'm just going to select it. And you're going to see it's going to tell me down here, you probably can't tell, but down here it's giving me instructions. It's going to say select the object to deform and then press enter. So I'm just going to click on the head and hit enter. And then it says select the wire curve and then also press enter. So I'm going to come over here in my outliner, hold down, I'm going to click my little wire here, hit enter. So now I basically have this wire here. And I'm going to make sure I grab both my wires and actually, before I do that, you know what you gotta do? You know what you gotta do? You know what you gotta do? You have to stop being stupid. I'm going to first grab these two guys. You can see that polygon edge to curve is part of the history, so I want to delete that history. It's a very important thing to do. Let's try this again. So let's go to deform. It's good to know. Deform, wire, select the head, hit enter, select the wire, hit enter. It's being stupid. Let's try this again. Select the wire curve. You have to hit enter while your mouse is in the scene. If you do it while you're in here, it thinks you want to rename the wire. That's what was going on. So now if I grab this wire, let's make sure that I have them both center pivoted. It's not a word, but if I move this now, you're going to see it's going to move. It's going to move the head around. It's basically just a curve that's just a deformer. You might be shocked to know this is not exactly what I'm going for. I mean, I like it. It's interesting, but it's not what I'm going for. It's actually kind of cool. You can kind of widen the eye too. But what I wanted to use this for basically is a way to kind of like affect just a few rows of points. I mean, again, someone might have an idea as to how to use this as is, but I have to kind of get a little bit more detailed here. But before I do that, let's also do the other one. So I'm going to go here and go to deform, wire, select the head, hit enter, select the wire, come in here, hit enter. So now, again, this one should also do a similar bit of disastrous deformation to the head. So now what I want to do is very simple. I want to just determine exactly where I want these these wire deformers to affect, right? So basically, I want to kind of like tell Maya what points to affect, what points to ignore. So you can do that by painting, right? You can kind of, it's like painting skin weights, except in this case, you're painting influence of a deformer. So I'll go to my deform menu here again and go to my edit. Actually, so I'm going to paint. Where's paint? Paint weights. Under weights, paint weights, I can choose wire. Okay, so now I'm going to bring up my little wire paint window, and you can see here I can just determine which wire I want. So I'm going to use wire 3, which is apparently, oh, my cat is talking on it. Okay, so it's, hang on 1 second, folks. I need to unplug my tablet because my cat is sitting on it and it's causing problems. Okay, so let's just try this one more time. So blink wire left. Let's just make sure. I got to find out which this is wire 3. Okay, so it's kind of hard to tell because they're not really giving me the names, but let's just try this again. So I'm going to go here. So let's go here to, yeah, I'm guessing it's wire 3 since that was the first one. I'm going to come here and replace everything with 0 and then flood. I don't want this to have any effect whatsoever yet. And I'm going to do the same thing with wire 4. Replace with 0. I only want this to affect a little bit of the mesh, right? And what do I want to affect? Basically, these little guys right here, these little points. So I'm going to grab the edges that I want to be affected. I'm going to use the inside ones as well. Maybe grab these outside ones and here. So these edges are the ones I want to be affected by that wire deformer in some form or other, right? I might end up adding more or less. We'll have to see. Dude, this, yeah, he's B, you have no idea. He not only is he fuzzy, but he's shedding, so I have like fur flying all over my face. It's a good time. So I'm going to go here. I've selected my edges. I'm going to hold down Control and right click. I'm going to change this to vertices. So basically going to select those vertices. So now I have these vertices selected that I want to use. Now I can go back to my paint weights tool, and it's only going to affect those points. I learned this, that you can isolate this way so late in my using of Maya, it's humiliating. But anyway, let's just go here. And I'm just going to add, I could just replace with 100%, but I'm going to end up adjusting this a little bit anyway. So I'm just going to kind of bring this in like so. Okay. And now I'm going to kind of come to these outer ones here. And I'm going to just reduce the influence a little bit. Let's go back to my little guy here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this. I'm going to replace it with like a very low amount, like say 0.4. I'm just going to kind of knock that down. And I'm going to do the same thing on the inner points. So I'm just going to grab these guys and go here. And I'm just going to kind of, I'm going to scale it. Scale. And scale is cool. Scale basically will just reduce the effect by a percentage, which is kind of neat. Okay. So let's just see how that looks. Now, what I want to do is I want to take this wire, which is kind of hard to see right now. So I'm going to kind of like isolate just these two so you can see it better. I want to take this wire, and now if I were to move it, right, you're going to see basically it's only moving a little bit. It's only moving these guys here, which is what I want. So I need there to be basically some easy way to do this where I'm not just moving. I want to actually kind of be able to animate it however I want. Gus says, when I'm doing characters' upper eyelids, the models come with eyes closed or open. Always open. Basically, what you want to think about, and this is the same reason why you don't usually do butt models in the T pose anymore, because it's always better to have to deform points by stretching them than deform points by collapsing them. Because if they're stretched out and then you want to collapse them, that geometry all has to go somewhere, and it's kind of hard to make it go somewhere. So that's why you don't do T poses, because that's not our normal position, right? When you bring the arms down, those points under the arm need to go somewhere, and they tend to collapse. It's better to stretch, right? And B, yeah, I'm doing this right. Yes, exactly. So I can have a gradient, so I can kind of control the fall off a little bit, right? I want to be able to kind of interactively come back to this if I need to and adjust the fall off of this. So what I'm going to do with this wire here is, instead of actually moving the wire itself, which you can do, But I want to make this into a cluster, and all a cluster really is just a more easily animatable representation of something. It's like you're adding a deformer to something. That's just there to kind of make it easier to grab and move and adjust. So I'm going to go to solo here. And here's my little wire. I'm going to come here and go to my control vertices and grab all of them, and then just hit cluster. So again, on a deform, I can just choose cluster, and you're going to see this little C here. There it is, right? And this is my little cluster. This basically, again, if I grab this and now I'll move it, it's going to move the wire. It's just, again, it just puts a little layer between the wire, the deformer, and the actual thing being animated. And I'm just used to doing it this way. So what I want to do with this eyelid cluster is animate it with a set-driven key. I want this to essentially, move when I tell Maya to make the character blink. Now, again, this right here does not look great at the moment. And it's no big deal. We can always adjust it. It's almost like painting skin weights. It's not a big problem. But yeah, guys, yeah, it's always, like I said, if you're going to rig something, it's better to have to stretch it after the fact than it is to collapse it after the fact. It's why the mouth should kind of be closed-ish, right? I have my mouth by default a little open just because it's easier to get in there when you're painting skin weights. But yeah. So what I want to do now is I want to kind of set driven key. And I'm going to come now. What I've done for the blink is my eye controls here. I have in the eye controls, I've made a custom attribute called blink, and it goes from 0 to 5. Why 0 to 5, not 0 to 1? Just because blinks, you tend to, eyelids tend to sometimes be a little bit low and a little high. I wanted to kind of give myself more room to kind of play in between. But it's the same idea. I want, when this is at 0, I want the eyes to not be blinking. When it's at 5, I want the eyes to be fully blinking. So what I'm going to do is, even though I'm nowhere near this yet, I want this cluster to be the thing that is going to kind of determine how the blink looks. So I'm going to go once again to my key. I'm going to do another set-driven key, the same way we did with the lip sync controls, right? This time I'm going to connect the blink control of my eye control to the cluster doing its blinky thing. It's a very technical term. The blinking thing, it's very tough. So I have my little eye control here. I'm going to hit load driver. So you're going to see in my driver is my blink attribute. It's at 0 right now. I'm going to grab my cluster for the eyelid and load that in my driven. Okay, and again, right now the cluster's not doing anything, and the blink is set to 0, and I want to kind of preserve that connection. Cluster's not doing anything, blink at 0, preserve that connection, right? So blink, now I'm going to select everything. Translate, rotate, scale, even though I might not be affecting them all. I just want to make sure if I go back later on and say, oh, you know what, this looks better if I scale it up. Well, now I know I've already got it set up to be part of the whole switch here. So I'll hit key. Okay, so all I'm saying is when blink is set to 0, that cluster is doing that, which is nothing. So now I'm going to go to my eyes control and turn on blink. I'm going to crank it up all the way to 5. And now I'm going to figure out what I need to do to this cluster to make it look like she's blinking. So I'm going to pull this down a little bit. I'm going to also go to my scale tool and scale it vertically to kind of like line it. Wait, oh, maybe not. Oh, scale the other direction, I'm guessing. Let's see here. There we go. Let me just kind of scale it vertically a little bit. I just want to kind of like make this a little bit cleaner. Might want to do a little rotating. Down like this. I'm going to bring it down right about to there. Now, again, you can see here it's being really, really stretched, and that's not a problem because I'm going to go now into my my paint weights thingy. And I'm going to hold down shift and lightly smooth this little area here up top just to kind of, stretch, even that out a little bit. Right. So I had kind of isolated the effect of the cluster of the wire deformer, but now I'm going to affect it a little bit by smoothing it. Now, what the heck am I doing? I'm just tweaking a little bit. I'm smoothing out the effect. And if I want there to, can you mirror the influence? You don't have to double unpinning. I can't in this sense because there are two different wire deformers. So I don't think it would work. It'd be cool to try, but I don't think it would work. Um, Also, because these wire deformers, I need them to work not just on the head, but also on the eyelashes. So um, it's unfortunate. Now, again, what I would probably do, it would be easier to do, is to do a blink in ZBrush. I can even do it in here with symmetry turned on, and then get a little fancy to kind of make them, two separate blend tools. So, I mean, so I could have, instead of doing a wire deformer, I could have just sculpted. Um, and that would have been fine. But I didn't want to do it that way because I want there to be the ability to essentially connect the same deformer to the eyelashes. And again, this is not, it's not beautiful, but I'm not hating it. Like I said, this is not, blinks tend to kind of happen kind of quickly, so don't need to be amazing. I'm just going to kind of add a little more of an influence here. And because these are blend shapes, you can come back and tweak them as much as you want. Okay, so again, remember, when you select points, those are the only points that are going to be affected. So I'm going to hit scale. I'm going to scale it down by like 80, by like, to like a slightly lower percentage, just to kind of tweak that a little bit. Okay. Now let's just go back to my cluster, because I can also just grab my cluster and tweak the cluster a little bit too. And you can also, just so you know, you can do this even more like discreetly. I can kind of grab these points and go up to Window, General Editor, Component Editor, and these are my 2 points. So I can go here to Weighted Deformers. Here's my wire deformer. So I can kind of like come here and tweak this if I wanted to. I can kind of make this something like 0.5 or 5 or 1. I can adjust these things. Right, so keep that in mind. All right, so let's go one last effect here, one last attempt to add the tiniest bit. This is typically the best way to do it, is to set it to add and have it be adding a tiny amount as you go. To be honest, I usually just do a blend shape by sculpting the eyes closed. And again, I might come back to that as well, but I wanted there to be something like this, just because, again, the reason why I wanted to do this is because I wanted that that wire deformer to also work on the eyelash. So we'll see how that works. It might not work. We'll see. So I'm gonna go back to 0 to 5 here. Oops. Let's undo that. Oh, I think I lost everything because I didn't keyframe it. That's a problem. No. Okay. Here's my cluster. Yeah. Okay. All right. So the cluster, it was keyframed there. Let's go back and turn blink on. Let's keyframe that. Scale it a little bit. There you go. Okay. So don't do that. Bring it down a little bit. Maybe tiny rotation. It's a decent starting point. Not quite there yet, but that's okay. Let's go back here to this and add a little bit more influence there. So let's make sure we keyframe this, because we didn't last time. So now if I bring this back up, like I said, I don't know if it's going to look good or not, but here's a blink. Now let's see if I can get that wire deformer to do the exact same thing to the eyelash, right? So I'm going to go up here to Deform, Wire Deformer. This time I'm going to select the eyelash, hit enter, and select the wire and hit enter. So now that wire deformer is also working on the eyelash, right? So if I bring this down, you're going to see the wire, it's coming down with it, kind of. Not doing a whole lot though. Let's see why that is. Case, the wire deformer is not really working so well on this one, which is not a big deal. I was always a little skeptical about that. So I'm just going to get rid of that that wire deformer on the eyelash. And I was going to do the eyelash pretty much manually. So all I'm going to do basically is have this eyelash come down with the eyelid. Now I can't just grab it and move it though, because as a blend shape, that won't do anything. Blend shapes only operate on the component level. So what I need to do is literally, I can just grab the vertices of this, right, and rotate this. Oh, looks like I still have history on here, so let's make sure that is. I love that little warning that Maya gives you. And these tweaks can be undesirable in situations like this. It's a very careful way of saying this is a horrible idea. So now I'm just going to kind of go here to my vertices and turn on soft select, which will kind of give me a nice smooth fall off. And just going to start bringing this down. Doing this manually because sometimes deformers don't always work so great. So, but this will work just fine, I believe, if I just come in here and sometimes it's easier just to sculpt them, sculpt the blink, but I wanted to give myself the possibility of kind of going in here and tweaking it a little bit more. Also, I didn't really want to have to worry about importing and exporting eyelashes and eyebrows and so forth. So this is all right. So basically all I'm doing here is putting the eyelashes where they would need to be for them to kind of line up with the upper lid. Turn off my soft select so I have a little more. The thing is, again, we do have the ability just to kind of smooth this out a little bit as well if we need to. Yeah, we do have sculpting tools here. Tools. Turn off reflection here. Just so, yeah, all right. So this will then be the blink for my left upper eyelid, right? So let's go here to my gateway group. I'm going to plug this in. Where is my eyelash here? Oh, Okay, so I don't have any blend shapes yet for this. Beautiful. Okay, so I'm just going to plug these straight in. So I'm going to go to my left upper lid blink, shift select my actual upper lash, deform, create blend shape because I don't have an existing one here. Left upper lash blend shapes, and yep, great. There it is. Okay, so now I'm going to turn this on for a second. You're going to see that link goes right down. So this guy here is my blink. I'm going to plug this head into the head blend shape gateway, and we'll see how they work together, right? So I'm going to edit my blend shape here, and let's see what we got. So now let's come in here, pop the head blend shape gateway node into my set driven key, set link to that. So let's put this right in my driver. When blink is set to 0, we want our blink blend shape set to 0. And when blink is set to 5, we want our head blink blend shape turned on. Boom. And make sure it's set to a linear thing so there's no delay. And now let's do the same thing while we got our set driven key thing open, set to blink here. Let's have that same thing set for the upper eyelash here. So I'm going to go here to my upper eyelash, make sure that is turned off. Pop that node into my driven. So blink is set to 0. My left upper eyelash blink is set to 0. Keyframe that connection and turn on blink, and then turn on that blend shape. Key that. So a lot of workaround, right? A lot of back and forth, just kind of getting it the way, looking the way you like it. But now if I come here to my eye control and I turn blink off and on, right? You can see here, this starts to move down a lot faster than the actual eyelid. So we have to just adjust that a little bit, and it's not really a big deal. When blink is at 3, all I gotta do is adjust basically the input of the head blink. So I'm gonna load that in here. And right now you can see it's at 0.6. Well, obviously it needs to be a little further along than that. So I'm just gonna go say 0.8, maybe 0.9, maybe 0.95, 0.96, 0.98. Okay, fine, we'll just do that, and we'll keyframe that. Still, you can still crazy here. So 2, let's make it a 2. Adjust that a little bit here as well. Trying to make these two guys work together, and it's not really working. So I don't really like the way that looks at all. No, again, live and learn. I didn't like the way this looks. So sometimes you just got to kind of like start over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my left blend shape node here, and I'm just going to delete that node. I don't want to have that blend shape plugged in because I just didn't like the way it looked. So we're just going to start with from a different point of view. So what I'm going to do instead, and again, this is like I said at the beginning, I wasn't sure how well it was going to work. I was not wrong. So what I want to do is I'm just going to go in here to ZBrush, and I'll do the same thing. I'll just do a blink this way. I think it could be probably a lot easier if I just do it this way anyway. I could do it in Maya as well, but I'm just going to try and do it here. It's faster to do it this way. Now, of course, I need to use Transpose Master because I want to be able to blink everything at once. So I'm going to go here to Transpose Master, and this will be a faster way. It's going to be the same concept, though, in the sense that I'm going to be making some poses here. So I'm just going to kind of like mask out everything but the eyelashes, upper eyelashes. I'm just going to do it this way. This is going to work just fine. It's not as elegant because it does kind of make it hard for me to kind of just adjust things on the fly. But that wire deformer was acting a little bit weird. It didn't seem to want to work for me, so that's okay. So I'm just going to do this. I'm going to invert this. I'm going to bring up the lower lashes a little bit here, and this is probably a much easier way to go about it. I'm going to select just this and here and just together. Well, that was probably a little bit easier, let's be honest. I'll bring the brow down a little bit. And let's bring the, so this is going to be basically the blink. And again, when you blink, really, come on. Your brows move a little bit as well. So it's going to kind of bring that down like this. The bummer about this is that now I have to basically export everything out, right? I have to kind of export all these pieces out, which is not a big deal, but so I'm just going to go here to the plugin, what is it called? Subtool Master, and then export. I'm just going to make a folder for the blink so I know to bring that in. Kind of bummed about this. I was really kind of hoping that that wire deformer was going to work, but hey, live and learn. All right, so exported all that out, and so that blink here, the blink gateway guy, the one that the head gateway with the blink blend shape coming in. This one we're just going to delete that, and we're going to just lock and hide it. We'll never need to use that one ever again because it didn't really work out. So we're just going to get rid of our blinky stuff here and just bring in the new one. Okay, so we're going to import those new pieces, and this will be a little bit, I guess, once we get everything imported in, it's not a big deal, but it was just a bummer to have to worry about all these different things. So let's bring in our left brow, bring in our lash. This is why I didn't want to do it this way, because you have to kind of bring in everything. I mean, usually I do it this way, but I don't have people stuck watching me, so it's not so bad. I can be boring on my own time with nobody's business. All right, so anyway, here's my blink, and let's just call this red blink. And I'm going to plug this into my head blend shape gateway just so we can see how this looks and see how it works a little bit better here. Using wire deformers do work. For the brows going up when she looks up and down, that is what I do. Like this thing here, those are wire deformers and they're working just fine. How's that X-Men cover coming? You know, it's I think the next character I'm doing is Beast, and I'm just like putting it off. I'm putting it off just because I can't just take a base mesh and like be done with it, which is part of the problem. So here's my head, my blink. Now this is interesting, right? You see this come down. I'm guessing it's the eyelashes. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set my blend shape to this. And I'm going to get a little bit fancy here, but not fancy, desperate, but still fancy, desperate, same thing. I'm going to have the blink control set up to this, right? But you can see here in my setup, when I blink, when I set this blink all the way down, there is a little gap. So I want to fix that somehow. So I'm going to keyframe the blink at 0 and the blend shape turned off. Now I'm going to turn that blend shape on. So I'm going to set that blink all the way on, and now I'm going to turn off head blink. You're going to see it doesn't quite go all the way down. So I can actually kind of change this. I can actually overdrive this a little bit. Instead of going to 1, which turns the blend shape on, I can go like to 1.2. which will kind of like go past it, which is, which is not necessarily the worst thing in the world, but I'll stick with 1.1 for now. If I need to tweak the shape, you know what I can do? I can just tweak the shape. What am I doing? Stick at that 1, and I'll keyframe that. Why? Because all I gotta do is come over here and grab this and pull it down. I couldn't tell, I think, because of the eyelashes being in the way. That's the good part about this, is that I can just pull it down. All right, make things really tough. I'm just going to do a little manual tweaking of these. So now this blink is 100% on, and now I just have to plug in the whatchamacallits, the eyelashes and all that kind of stuff. So great. So now let's kind of grab these guys and bring this back. All right. So now I got to do the same thing with the eyelashes, right? So this is, again, this is the least exciting part of this, but what are you gonna do? So this is my left upper lash blink. And I'm going to plug this into my eyelashes directly, because these eyelashes aren't going to have a whole lot of blend shapes, and they're not really like bound in the same way. So I'm not too worried about that. But you can see here something that happens sometimes too. In my inputs, the blend shape node is above the skin cluster node, which is a problem because that's going to override the actual binding. So I have to go to the inputs and push this down below by just middle mouse dragging it down, which again, kind of a bummer, but what are you going to do? So here's my blink control again, set to 0. Let's grab my blend shape node, load driven, blink, blink, key. This is where like fast forwarding, if I were doing this in a video, probably be a good idea. And then that's my cat again. I'll just keyframe that. All right, so now you can see he's just walking on my tablet, all kinds of problems. Okay, so come on, Buck. Come on, little guy. Okay. So now you can see here where I am. Let's see where we are with our blink. I'm making it really hard. It's going after my hand now. There you go. So you can see here how that eyelash goes right down with it, just fine. Let's go down here to the lower eyelash. Come on, bud. He's making it so hard. Okay, so let's go to my lower eyelash. Plug this into my lower eyelash. Form, create blend shape. Lower. Oh, here we go. Once again, let's just grab the inputs. And that Beastman, I probably could use as a proxy B. It's a good point. Yeah, probably. The problem is, I don't know. I was stupid when I sculpted him. There's a version of him that's not posed, but it's so generic that I guess I probably could use it. I'll have to try. It's a good point, though. I might have to try that out. Gus, have you tried using layers in ZBrush for the blend shapes? I have done that. I've used layers for blend shapes, but I tried sending them over with the Maya blend shapes plugin. It got weird. GoZ couldn't find my Maya for whatever reason. It was looking for Maya like 2017 instead of my 2024. So, but that I do use layers. I have used layers. Because that's a really easy way just to kind of keep, and you can actually kind of go back and forth, right? And kind of like, like see what part you might like best and kind of almost stop it. You know, like if it looks better at 0.8 of the layer, then you keep that expression. That's definitely definitely the faster way to go. These are like there are so many things like that. There's so many like little plugins and stuff that I'm convinced that if I actually learned how to use them all, my life would be so much better. Like, do you ever think that if you like actually read the instruction manuals for all the stuff that you own, like you probably don't realize how much better half the stuff probably is, but you just use it the way you've always used it. That's my opinion. Guys, like, yeah, again, I'm sorry if this is a little less than thrilling, because rigging is not a thrilling thing to watch. It's just, but to me, it's exciting just because it's all about potential. Like you're doing all this because you know that when all is said and done, um, when you are going to like work on this, you give yourself so many different things you can play with. And again, I know it's not an exciting thing to watch necessarily, but as a rigger, like that's always been what makes it exciting for me, is that it's all about just giving you or the animator, whoever that might be, just some really fun tools to use, you know. And that's just to me that's just always been kind of the exciting part about it, is just because like it's all about potential. It's all about just saying, well, if they want to, they can do these 75 things. They might never do them, you know what I mean? But by putting that in the rig, you've given that, you know, heretofore static model the capacity to do all kinds of really amazing things. And it's just for me, I always wanted to kind of whatever you work on, I always kind of wanted to go further than just making it. Like I couldn't just like I couldn't just make something, take a picture, and then call it a day, just because I felt like it's almost an anticlimax. Like I wanted there to be more than that, if that makes any sense. So that's where like you know the 3D printing came in. That was always an exciting thing because all right, I'm not done once I finish sculpting and take the picture. Now I can print it out and I can paint it and I can actually own it and stuff like that. Um, and that's where animation for me comes in. Like I like I'm going to make this model. I'm going to go into go to the trouble of making this model. I want to do more with it, you know, and saying, okay, now I have a rig for it. Now, if I wanted to, I could make this character talk. You know, like whether or not I actually do. No, but it's kind of it's nice to know that you could, and it's nice to know that I don't know that it doesn't have to end with you just finishing. I always wanted there to be more to it than that. I always wanted to kind of like I wanted it to be I wanted all that time you put into making something to be worth it, if that makes any sense. Um, and to me that's the real appeal of animating stuff is that you take something that you've made and you get to play with it now, you know? Yeah, and again, Gus, I mean, usually when I do Go Z, it goes and it finds my Maya. This time it just didn't do it. I think maybe I just needed to kind of reinstall Go Z or something like that, which I think would probably work. I, I was again, I was playing around with that before, like yesterday. I was like, you know what, I probably shouldn't do that right before a stream because if I mess it up, then you know. But that would be, yeah, the good way to go. Usually, again, like usually I go in there and I just make 1,000 copies of the head, just do all kinds of expressions. And I was trying something a little bit different this time, just because I wanted to see if having like these kinds of wire deformers and stuff like that gave me more flexibility. I don't know that they do, but it really did help with the eyebrows moving with the brow itself. It saved me the trouble of just doing it manually. All right, so there we go. So we have the eyelashes and the face and the eyelids all working together, right? You can see here how the brow goes down a little bit, the skin, and that's why I need to have the eyebrows plugged in. So the eyebrows, though, they already have a blend shape node. That gateway is plugged in. So these are going to go into the gateway. So this is going to be my RB blink. This is going to be my LB blink, my left brow blink. And I'm going to plug this into the L brow gateway. So again, like I apologize in advance if this kind of the whole gateway thing is weird. All it is, it's just me not wanting to have the bound meshes also kind of like burdened with all these blend shapes being plugged in. I just want a single blend shape plugged into it, and that single blend shape is a model which itself has all the rest of the stuff coming in. I just found that if there's ever a problem, I'd always much prefer to have to fix something that's not the bound mesh, just because we keep missing. I think it's because my cat is laying on my tablet, so I need to unplug. Right, brow intermediate. There it is. Okay, so good. Now I have the blinks ready to go. So let's go here to my gateway, go to my intermediary, plug that in there, and now we're back to blinking again. So when blink's at 0, my right brow blink is at 0. See how excited this is why, by the way, you just do this and you put on like music or something that you can just watch, because it is not it's not what you call a whiz bang action adventure. Like I said, I find it fun, but I'm a dull person. Let's go now to the final control. So we've been plugging in face controls, upper eyelashes, lower eyelashes, and now eyebrows, right? We just have one more guy to plug in there. So let's plug in our lower brow intermediary here. Blink 0, 0, keyframe that, crank that all the way up, and then crank that all the way up, and then key. So now we're going to go to our graph editor and just make sure that it's a linear interpolation, so it goes nice and immediate. So now, at long last, we can just be like, boom, see? And again, so I can kind of like, if I need to have her like, her eyes like a little bit lower like this, I can do that as well. Now I am going to end up doing a squint as well, and a squint is different than a blink. It's not going to be, a squint is not this. A squint is going to bring the lower eyelids up more. I'm not going to ask you to watch me do that because that would just be cruel. But that's something that I also will want to do. But long story short, now we have our blink group here, and I can just pop that into the blink blend shape group, hide that, and we can call that one done for now. Thank goodness. And this is kind of the thing that, again, I want to kind of play around with while I'm using ZBrush here. It's going to be a little bit tricky because, again, my cat's on my tablet, so I'm going to have to use a mouse, if you can believe it. I'm going to call this one, let me see here. Where's this? Let's go back to, let's just get rid of everything else here. Okay, so basically what I want to do here is I want to do a couple of little blend shapes for this face that I can just bring in and plug right in, right? So I want to do little expressions that I'm not going to use a wire deformer for, that are just kind of like special expressions. And I'm going to kind of like play around with like little sneers, for example. So here's what I would do if I want to if I want to give myself the ability to use an expression that goes on both sides or one side, right? So let's say, for example, I want to kind of give her a little bit of a sneer with her, like her nose, her little nose wrinkled up or something like that, right? So I kind of like do a little bit of a sneer here on the side, kind of like this, right? And then maybe bring the brows in a little bit like this. So it's just a very subtle little sneer here. Maybe you bring the lip up a little like this too. It's a little bit more of a disgust look, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this disgust. I'm going to export this out. And what I want to do with this is show how you can, again, there are different ways of doing it. I'm sure Maya has newer ways now that allow you to kind of do this a different way. But I want there to be a way to kind of separate this from left to right. I want to be able to have not just that sneer of disgust look on the whole face. Maybe I want to have just the left side of the nose come up as opposed to both sides. Maybe she's kind of like doing more of a smirk, and I want to have it just be on one side of the face. I just want to show you a way that I do it, and I know there's probably a better way. Like Maya has changed a lot. I've been rigging for like 15 years or so, and I've pretty much rigged the same way for 15 years, which means there are probably better ways of doing certain things now. And I'm just, I've kind of, I've been okay with not figuring that out, which is, kind of stupid. But so here's my disgust. This is again, this is just all one expression, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a version of the face, which is just a blank version of the face. In other words, one that has not been um, in any way worked on. This is just a copy of the face here. All right. So what I want to do, I'm going to give myself two of these. I'm going to duplicate this. So this is two copies. This is going to be sneer right, the right hand side, and this is going to be sneer left. Okay, so I have jeepers. I have this one, which is just out and out sneer. Okay, it's just the whole face sneer, so I can use. All right, B, again, thanks for showing up, man. I really appreciate it. Take it easy, man. So what I want to do is I want to have this one to be used as a sneer, but I also want to have these. I want to have a left and right version of it as well. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this guy. I'm going to plug it into my left sneer. I'm going to go deform, create blend shape. I'm just going to call this sneer left. This is my midpoint here. This is a middle ground. This is going to be used as kind of like again, another intermediary. So I have this plugged in, right? If I come in here and just turn this on, boom, right? You can see it's just turning on that sneer. What I want is for this to only be on the left-hand side. I want to be able to have basically on the right and left-hand side separately. So all I'm going to do is go to my front view. I'm going to go to my vertex mode and grab the whole left-hand side of the face. Okay. So I've selected this whole side here. And now I can go here to my deform menu. I can go to my paint weights and go to paint blend shape weights. And here's my sneer incoming. I hit replace with 0 and just hit flood, right? So now basically what I've done is I've kind of reduced the influence of that blend shape by 100%. Now it looks a little bit goofy, so I can always come in here and smooth that out. Go to paint weights again, go to blend shape, and now I can just hold down shift and just smooth that out a little bit so it's not quite so crazy. What this allows me to do basically is to take any blend shape I've done and just kind of separate it right to left, right? Again, it's a little intense. I probably wouldn't go all the way up. I probably wouldn't crank it all the way to 100%, but now I can do that. I can do the same thing here, right? So I'm going to come here and once again, I'll go to create blend shape. All this right sneer midpoint. This is just kind of like the one in between. I do the same thing, crank that up. Go to my vertices here on the left-hand side. Skin weights tool, right? Sneer, replace, 0, flood. And then I'm going to go back to that and just smooth it so it's not quite so crazy intense. Right? So now I have basically a right and a left sneer. And what I'll just do with that is come in here and I'll give myself little controls that I can just do, right? So for example, here, let's go and I'm just going to create a little sphere, a sneer sphere, as you might say. And this is going to be a little control right on the side of the nose that I can then just turn into basically a nose wrinkler, right? So I'm just going to kind of grab this and move this to about the side of the nose right here. Right about there. And then I'll duplicate it and then just swap it over to the other side. So now I'm going to grab them both, use their transformation so that they're all clean. I'm going to name this control curve underscore L underscore sneer. And do the same thing. This guy, control curve underscore R underscore sneer. I'm going to put them in their own little groups because again, you always want to have a group in there so you can kind of work on them separately. And I'm going to recolor these. Usually for me on my rigs, stuff on the left-hand side, I make green. So I'm going to go to my attribute editor, go here to my drawing overrides, turn on enable overrides and make it green. And stuff on the right-hand side, I'll just make a bright red so it stands out. And what I want to do is make it so that these can't just go everywhere. I just want to be able to pull it up like this to kind of make a sneer, right? So you can see here in my channel box, I move this up, it's like 0.3. So what I'm going to do now is go to my attribute editor and go to that first tab under limit information. Translate limit y is going to be 0. It can't be any lower than 0, and the maximum is 0.3. So now I cannot move this anywhere but 0 to 0.3. I'm going to do the exact same thing here. Minimum 0, maximum 0.3. And I do not need anything else but to translate y. So I'm just going to kind of grab all the rest of these, right click, lock and hide. So now all I can do is this. I can move them up and down, and that's it, right? So I'm going to now do a set driven key to connect the movement of these to the sneer controls, right? So let's do that. Set driven key. So key, set driven key, set. I'm going to grab my little right guy, pop him in here, and I want to go now. Of course, I need to have my little sneers plugged into the intermediary head. So I'm going to grab both of these, go into my head blend shape gateway. Let's add that to the head node. And because this is going to be turned off and on, I want to kind of set the set driven key to that. So I get my set head blend shape gateway here, go to my head intermediary, pop it in there. Now, this is my right sneer, and that is at its current default position. I want right sneer to be 0, so I'll keyframe that together, crank it up, come over here and turn that on, and then we'll keyframe that, right? And again, so now I've just set a little switch to kind of make the movement of this curve turn on that blend shape. Now let's let's pull that back down. Grab this other guy, pop that in there, and now I'm going to do the same exact thing, but in this case with sneer left, right? Keyframe them together at 0, then pull this up, and then turn on sneer left, keyframe that, make sure it's linear so that the switch is exact, and then, did not seem like, it didn't key. That's because I'm dumb. Let's try that again. I think I hit key, but it wasn't selected. For some reason, it deselects sometimes. I'm not going to blame myself for that. I'm going to blame Maya for that one. It does that sometimes. Do you ever notice how sometimes Dynamesh just turns itself off in ZBrush? Same thing. So now, yeah, boom, boom. So now I have these controls that will give me a nice little sneer controls. If I want to kind of like, stop it. If I want to make the whole sneer, I could plug this in, or I could really just grab both controls and just do that, which does the exact same thing, right? So little sneer control here, boom. This does both, right? It does the full sneer. I could also just grab one and do one side, or just a little bit of like, even if she's just like looking at something, she doesn't know what to make of it. She's like, you know what I mean? It's just a little thing. And I could do the same kind of thing with blinking as well, too, right? So, for example, if I wanted to have her be able to wink or kind of like squint or kind of like scrunch one eye down, I can just do that same thing. I take that blend shape, plug half of it in, and that tends to be what I do later on as well. But this is kind of a nice little easy way. It's a fairly quick way, right, to kind of take a single blend shape, essentially turn it into two by just sectioning off its influence. All right, so I'm just going to call this sneer group. Pop this into my blend shape folder and then hide it. Now these little nose controls here, there's a problem, right? If I grab my head and just move the head, well, they stay behind, right? And they need, of course, to move with the head. So I'm going to grab my two little sneers. Now, again, they're already in groups, which means I can move the groups around and nothing's going to happen to the face, right? Because they're in the groups, and the groups have nothing to do with anything, really, because the connection being made to the blend shape is the actual translate value of the control itself. The group translate value doesn't have any connection at all. But these need to go somewhere, right? So they need to kind of move with the head. So it makes sense, of course, for me to kind of like make them move with the head. Now, if I were to grab my upper face control and move this, it's going to move the whole nose. So instead of parenting these controls to my head, it makes sense to parent them to the upper face control. That way, if I move the upper face control, they're going to kind of stay with the nose as much as possible. Before I do, I also don't want these always visible. You'll note that if I go to my head control here, I have some custom controls. I have control visibility switches. So I can take my lip sync controls, for example, and turn those off so they won't be keyframed unnecessarily. They're not going to be getting in my way. I have controls for the brows, which I've already done. You can see here I have these little controls on the brows. So I can kind of grab the brow here, for example, and move it up, right? I can grab the inner part here and kind of like move this down and kind of like, so I have some controls already made. But again, these are kinds of things that, like, for me anyway, I don't do the facial expressions until very close to the end. I want to kind of like do all the physical stuff first, see what I'm going to, see what part I'm going to see, get the timing down, and then I can kind of have the expressions do it. I kind of bring them, I do them at the end. I don't know if they're supposed to do it that way. That's just the way I do it. And so I don't want to be, when I grab all my curves and keyframe them, I don't want to be grabbing my expression curves at the same time if I'm not really working on those yet. So I just hide them, right? So I have all these controls set to on and off controls, right? I have the same kind of thing with my mask controls here. So you're going to see, this little mask here. I can kind of grab this and kind of move the mask around a little bit if I need to. I believe somewhere I have a mask on and off control, but I don't really care to use that at the moment. But anyway, I have my controls on and off. So what I'm going to do here is do the same thing with these face controls. Now I'm going to have other controls for the mouth and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not going to have like an on and off control for the sneer. I'm going to have an on and off control for the face controls basically. So I'm going to grab these two groups here and then put them in another group. And I'm going to name this group GRP underscore face controls. And it's just it's actually lower face controls because it's going to be from the nose down. That way I'll parent them to the upper face, this lower face control here. That way it'll move with it. But I also want to be able to affect the visibility of this whole group with a single switch. So I'm going to go to my little head control. I want to add another switch. So I'll go up here to edit, add attribute. And I want this to be displayable. I don't want this to be, I'm sorry, not displayable. I want it to be keyable for now. We're going to switch it later on. And I want the name of this to be, I'm just going to call it low face controls. All right. And I want it to be Boolean. Boolean just means on and off. It's an on and off switch. Okay. So I'll hit OK. You're going to see its lower face controls is right there. It's set to off by default. I do want to eventually make it non-keyable. But for some reason, if it's non-keyable, you can't use it as a connector to something else yet. So I have to connect it first, and then I'll make it non-keyable. But what I'm going to do is simply have it be, when this is off, the visibility of the lower face controls is off. When it's on, they're on, right? So I'm going to use what's called the connection editor, which is a very direct connection. It's not the same thing as a set-driven key because there's no on and off. It's just a direct connection. So under Windows, General Editors, I'm going to choose the connection editor. It's my computer is acting slow, so I'm going to just save because I'm paranoid. So my connection editor is a very simple thing. You connect something on the left-hand side to something on the right-hand side. So if I grab my head control and choose load left, it's going to load everything that's keyable here. I'll go to my lower face control group and load that in the right. And all I want to do is set the switch to the visibility. You're going to see they're going to just go away because by default, that switch is set to off. If I set this to on by typing in 1, they come back, right? So that's all this is. Simply it's simply an easy switch to kind of make them visible or not visible. And now that I have them visible, I can grab that whole group, shift select the lower face control and hit P. Now I'll parent it. So now if I grab the lower face control and move it, right, those controls are going to move with it as well. All right. So now that I've done that, now I can come over here and right click on my new switch and say make selected non-keyable, because there's no reason to keyframe these on and off. There's never any reason to animate that. It's just going to give you unwanted keyframes. So I just turn that off there. Okay. So it's a straightforward thing. So the last thing I really want to do is to do one last cleanup with the sync controls. We did the teeth. We did the sync controls, and we need to adjust the teeth. So if you remember, I made this F control. When I do that, the teeth are way in the way. So we need to find a way to make these teeth easily adjustable, right? Now, I'm going to hide, just for a second, this head. I'm going to pop this head on a layer and just hide that layer for a second so you can see what's this is my bottom teeth group, okay? And they're actually in a group, And that group is assigned to a lattice deformer, a regular free form deformer. And that lattice is bound to this joint, this bottom teeth joint. So if I move this joint around, right, it moves the teeth around, right? That's really all it is. It's simply a joint that the teeth are connected to. So what I want to do is have a control that will control that joint and therefore control the teeth. So I'm going to select this joint. Now you could make a curve and then attach it, like kind of move it into place. There are scripts in Maya that automatically attach it there. So I have my joint selected. I'm going to choose square. And you can see it's going to put a curved square right there. I'm just going to kind of scale this down a little bit here around the teeth. It's going to be one of those things where I might make these visible and not invisible at times too, because you don't really often need to adjust the teeth, technically speaking. I'm going to call this CC underscore lower teeth. And again, I'm going to group it to itself. So now it's in a group, okay? But this group is going to be the one that I'm going to use to animate the teeth moving when I use that F and V thing, which means I need to have another, you see how it's got some stuff in it. I got to put this into another group. So now I have a group within a group. And now you can see that group is nice and zeroed out. And this on the top here, this is the offset group. This is the one that's just going to be the one that we use to kind of attach to other things. But the actual curve, which I'm going to just recolor, I don't know, yellow, is going to be the one that controls this joint. So I'm going to grab this curve, shift select this joint, and I'm going to do a couple of constraints here. I'm going to constrain it. Let's go to constrain. Let's go to point. So it's going to do a point constraint. It's going to constrain it exactly in place. I could do an orient constraint to make sure it rotates if I need to. Why not? I don't think I'll need to, but I will. Then I'll do a scale constraint as well, because I want this to be able to, now you saw the teeth change a little bit. It's because the teeth need to maintain the offset. They're already scaled a little bit. So now, basically, if I grab this curve and move it, it's going to move the teeth, right? So the reason why I want to do that is because I want to be able to have this mid-range group here might be a set-driven key. It's going to kind of adjust the placement of the teeth when I need them to move automatically. And that moment is when I'm going to shift this F switch on. So I'm going to bring back my face. And I'm going to go here to my lower teeth set-driven key. I want to go to my key and set-driven key, set. I'm going to pop this into my driven, which it goes in automatically, which is nice. I want to grab my FV slider and make that my driven. And when that is at the top, which means F and V is not turned on, these values can be what they currently are, which is nothing, right? Keyframe that. Now I'm going to bring this down. And when this is down, you can see here the lower teeth really shouldn't be there at all. So I need to kind of grab this set-driven key control and move those teeth down and back, right? Like this. All right. And now I'm just going to keyframe that as well. So now basically, again, this is totally cheating. This is just saying when I want to make this lip pose, I want the entire set of teeth to move away. That's it. So now you can see here, boom, you can't tell, but they're moving. Now the upper teeth aren't really where they need to be either. They need to kind of come forward a little bit. So I need to do the exact same thing. So again, I'm going to turn off the face. I'm going to go to the bone for the upper teeth now, which is this one. And once again, I'm going to create my little control curve for this. So let's go here to my little square. And again, this is just my control curve. Very rarely, like I said, that you will need to actually animate this curve. So I would probably will hide this for the most part, most of the time. But for now, we're just going to give it a name, control curve underscore teeth. Now I'm going to group it to itself. And this is going to be called, this is my group. I'm going to group it to itself a third time. So this, again, this third time is the offset group. It's the one that we're going to just parent to whatever. So it's going to, have its translations messed up. But the other two groups need to be nice and clean. And this mid group here, the one between the actual curve and the offset, that's my set driven key group. So I'm going to pop that in here. But right now it's not doing anything. I have to make sure it's actually going to affect this curve. So I'm going to grab this curve here, shift select the joint, and once again, we'll do a point constraint, an orient constraint, and a scale. I have no idea what I'm going to use it for, but I'm going to leave it that way. So now when FV is at 0, we're going to have all these values here set to their current zeroed value. Key. Let's bring back my face so I can see how this looks. Let's bring this down. And now let's bring my top teeth here up a little bit and maybe forward a little bit like this. Okay. Like that. And we'll keyframe that. I kind of want this jaw to be higher up in this pose. So I might need to tweak that FV pose. But before I get too far ahead of myself, let's make sure this is all set. Let's come here to my graph editor and just make sure it's a linear interpolation. So now again, we have the upper teeth and the lower teeth moving for the sake of that pose. But I want that lower lip up more. So let's kind of find that group, sync group here, and let's find my FV, because this is the one that I want to tweak. You can see here, this lower lip needs to come up a little bit, but because it's turned on right now and it's essentially live, I can just grab these faces here. Come on, just let me grab these faces. I hit B, turn on soft select, kind of give me a little bit more of a fall off here. And as I isolate the up and down, just pull that, maybe rotate it back a little bit as well. These faces down here and pull them out a little bit too. That's why it's good to have these guys kind of plugged in. You can just kind of like adjust it on the fly. And maybe we'll grab these vertices here. Place them vertically and just going to nudge them up a little bit. Okay. There we go. Now that's the FV. Right. So we got all of our controls now. This is a go in here with the little push up on the nose. We got our lip sync controls here. There you go. Our lip sync controls happening. What we don't have is the only visine, the only phoneme we don't really have is the L/T, because we need a tongue for that. I haven't made the tongue yet, so that's something that we'll need to come back with. All right. So anyway, so today we did a bunch. We got a lot of stuff done here. Last thing I'm going to do before I go wandering is I'm just going to make a quick control to turn the visibility of the teeth on and off. The teeth control, I should say. Here's my attribute editor here, and so we have our two teeth groups controls. I'm going to grab both of those. Well, actually, the upper teeth group here should be parented to this control. Yeah. So let's go to the head control one more time. Let's add one more attribute. Teeth control. Boolean add. We'll go to our connection editor again, which I have a little button for up top here. And I'm just going to grab both of these guys, pop them here, and connect the teeth control to the visibility, so that now I can turn those off and on very easily. And now I just want to take these groups, the lower teeth, since that goes with the lower jaw, I'm going to parent that to the lower jaw control, and the top teeth, I'll parent to the lower face control. And now I can go ahead and make this non-keyable, turn that off. All right, so where are we after all that crap today? Well, we have a couple things, right? We have a blink. some fits and some start some some fits and starts here, but some little tweaks here to be made too. The lower lids have to be tweaked a little bit, but when it's blinking, you got a little bit of everything happening there. We got the teeth controls now. We have the sync controls completely set up. We got the pucker, which gives so much more flexibility to the face. We got the F and V, which has some blend shapes plugged in to kind of make the teeth move the way they're supposed to. We have the B/M brush, which has a little bit more of a push up now on the face, right? We have our sneer control. So if I bring in my lower face controls, we have a starting point with these. Not done, but we're getting there, right? A little sneer. And I'll be doing the same thing with the smile and frown and the upper lip and lower lip. Like these are kind of controls that I'll be plugging in a little bit. I'm going to be doing a squint, which is probably an important one, and a couple of other controls that are going to be just strictly blend shapes that I'll just bringing in from ZBrush. But the approach is the same. You just kind of you bring the blend shapes in, you create controls or attributes which will kind of affect them, and then connect them using set-driven keys. I also, next time, I think next week, I'm probably still going to be working on her. I'll probably be doing some controls for the clothing to give them more flexibility. You can see here for the jacket, for example, if I go to my root, I can bring in controls for the jacket, and they're useful. I mean, I can kind of grab these controls here and, you know, like animate the jacket moving around. But if she's going to be kneeling down while she's picking this lock, which is kind of the idea, there's going to need to be more control over how that jacket works. And I'm not going to use cloth simulations. So we're going to get a little fancy with that next time as well. To dilate the IRAM, I probably won't. And it wouldn't be a big control. It wouldn't really be a big problem, I don't think, to do. Because you would need a better you would probably just need a better UV setup than I do. But it's definitely not crazy to do. I think you could essentially just adjust. You can keyframe the UVs a little bit. But I don't think that I'll do that. If I did, eh, I mean, generally speaking, that would be almost a geometrical thing you might want to do. Like you actually might want to actually have the um, the actual edges move, and I might do that. The problem is these eyes that I did, they don't have concentric circles, so that would be a little bit less straightforward to do. Um, let me see something here. I don't remember now whether this works or not. Um, yeah, yeah, good. Um, yeah, I think that would have to. That would be weird. It'd be kind of cool looking. See, I could definitely do it that way, but it would stretch a little bit. I think that I would have had to have planned a lot better than than I did to do that. It's a good call though. But because they're eyes, I mean, I think I could fairly easily just kind of like put the same texture on a different eye. So that's actually a pretty good idea. I might need to I might need to do that. That'd be a fairly straightforward switch because eyes aren't obviously, it's not like I have to create a whole new face or something like that. So yeah, that's oh, it's just house. Thank you. Thank you very much. I also have to do some controls for the hair, to make the hair be able to kind of, wave, like move a little bit as she turns her head. Lots of the stuff like this for again, this is the hero character. This is the main character of the little short that I'm doing. So she needs to kind of have a lot of capacity to express herself. A lot of the characters don't really need that as much. Um, See here, like got to do some tweaking to the weighting as well. Um, but uh, yeah, I definitely need to do some skin weighting here, some weight painting here. But for the most part, yeah, I got to do some controls on the coat to kind of add a little bit of flexibility to when she's kind of kneeling down. That would definitely be a good thing. Um, Yeah. So, okay, yeah, that'll probably be, again, that's kind of like the tricky part of this is 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 kind of anticipating all the crap that's going to happen. And I think that that's what I have to do next. So that's what I have to figure out. But I think that the main thing is going to be making it so that she can kneel down and the coat will kind of be able to be controlled that way, making the hair controllable, and just putting um, the rest of the facial expressions on there, which is not as big a deal. Again, it's a lot. You saw today. Basically, there's a lot of this was a lot of it was pretty much the same thing over and over again. It's just make an expression, come in, plug it into the blend shape, plug the blend shape into the attribute, turn on the switch, and that's, it's just going to be kind of rinse and repeat. Um, and that's kind of where we are. But you can see here, yeah, it's getting a little bit better. Um, But yeah, so you can see here, I have to make a little bit of some adjustments here to the belt. You can see I kind of knew that that was going to be the case. I have in my blend shape folder, I have a whole group for the belt right here because again, like she's going to be kind of like bending over a lot, and she needs to be able to do so. And you can do a lot of this with the belt, but again, at some point, the belt begins to kind of push through. So I'm going to make a control, which is essentially going to be, give me the ability to kind of like adjust and tweak so that there's no interpenetration. Same idea for the jacket. Everything's still kind of, like I said, it's like 80% done. Um, but for the most part, getting the facial expressions set up, getting the lip sync control set up, getting the basic flow working, I think it's going to be that's a big step forward. So basically, what I'll end up doing in between this week and next week is a lot of the controls a lot of the expressions for the face, because plugging them in again, it's the same thing over and over again. I'll do a little bit of next week. It's going to be more about the belt, the jacket, and the hair, making sure those controls are available too. But I've already started another character. One of the creatures that she's going to be dealing with, or that her party is going to be dealing with, um, the old D&D standby, the kobold, and I started doing that one as well. So that might next week I might be sculpting the kobold. Or one of those characters as well, to kind of like maybe alternate a little bit between rigging and that kind of a thing. So hopefully this was at least helpful, at least in terms of like getting some ideas as to what an approach to rigging controls are and expressions and all that kind of stuff. A little bit of a detour with the wire deformer didn't quite pan out, but that's going to happen. Again, you find out what works best for your rig, and also just as important, know when to realize that a different approach might be better. So anyway, again, thank you all so much for sticking around, and for hanging out with me today. I really, really appreciate it. Hope to see you next week. Have a great, great day. See you guys.